Sameer Bagai, we have already discussed that he is working in aviation and currently he is working in Air India Limited, which is a DGCA regulator on deputation currently. And he is the instructor on B787 and a senior flight operating inspector with DGCA. So Sameer sir has the experience of around 15,000 hour of on wide body aircraft like 777/787 and Airbus. So he held a higher management position in Air India at a so that so his information would be very much critical for all of us because as we all know how the aviation industry is and how we have to follow those SLAs and that thing will help us immensely. Yeah. So now, Amit bhai, would you like to add something about Vaibhav sir?
Sure. Am I audible? Everyone?
Absolutely. Yeah, just a small request. Please don't call me sir. I would just prefer to be addressed by first name. So I'm okay with Vaibhav. So please, thank you.
Sure. Thanks. So,
thank you. Thanks, guys.
Let me introduce Vaibhav for us. So Vaibhav is also, like Jyoti gave a brief introduction. So he's a senior first officer. He has an experience of almost close to about 13 years in the industry. He has flown aircrafts from Boeing 737, 777, and the 787 Dreamliner. And he's worked for various airlines, starting from Jet Airways, like he already mentioned, Etihad, and right now he's with Vistara. And apart from his profession, he also has certain other passions. He's a certified yoga instructor. He's also a mountaineer. He has climbed climbed a few great peaks around the world, starting from Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa and Mount Fitzroy in South America. And he's also gone to the the base camp of Mount Everest, and he's actually gone beyond the advanced base camp of Mount Everest. And yeah, I think maybe with his experience, not just his professional experience, he can also give us an idea on the adversity quotient that we came across, in our various subjects in our. So yeah, please go ahead, Sameer and Vaibhav. Yeah.
Yes, so that I am going to talk about that sir bit a little later when I'm discussing the organizational structure in Western countries.
Yeah.
Because it's something I want to touch upon. So who's got the screen right now? Can you share it with Vaibhav? Because we
can I share the screen?
Yeah. Sure. All of you have access. Please share your screen.
Okay. We're going to just start with a small video and then I'll talk a bit. But let him just show you a very small video and some slides.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, can you see my screen, right? Okay, so this is just a small. Okay, perfect. It's a small video, not to scare you guys, but it's interesting. It's a nice small video.
We can't hear the music if there is any.
It's not audible. It's only video getting played. No music.
I'm sorry. Is it not audible? Is it?
Yeah. We are only seeing the screen.
How can I make it audible? Can anybody guide me? Because it's the first time I'm actually sharing my screen working on it. Is there something different I need to do here?
In Teams, you have an option in
share sound. Okay.
Yeah.
Sound. Was it audible now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Can you make it from the beginning? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to do that. All right.
Right. Thanks, Weber.
Right. Stop share. Okay.
So, sorry, some of the slides were a little graphic in nature, but the idea is to put across what happened in some of those flights and what were the timelines for what is today commonly known as CRM. You can hear me, all of you?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
scary actually.
Yes, it is. It
Yeah.
is. It is still the safest form of transportation in the world, irrespective of what you see or hear. But let's look at the timelines to start with. You saw the first timeline of 1903. I think the date was 17th of December 1903, when two gentlemen who owned a bicycle shop, the Wright brothers, as I'm sure all of you are aware, flew the first manned flight. I think it lasted 17 or 20 odd seconds. And 66 years later, on the 20th of July, is it 20th of July? Yes, I think I've written it somewhere here. Yeah, 1969 is when man first put his step on the moon. That's 66 years from first flight to the moon and back. That has to be an amazing timeline for any industry. It was one of the fastest evolving innovation-driven industries of its time, that you can manage to do something like this in such a short duration. And of course, there were a couple of black swan events, the two world wars, which heightened the production of and the evolution of aviation. Not very nice black swan events, obviously, but because the aircraft were going to be used for transportation and as war machines, there was a lot of industrial development of aviation in these two wars. If you actually read Nicholas Taleb's book, 2007 book called The Black Swan, it talks about how aviation was given a fillip in this in these two wars. By the way, I would like to think that the COVID pandemic was a black swan event for the IT sector. Right, because it's probably pushed the IT sector ahead by 10 years from what it would have otherwise followed a timeline. Having said that, do read the book and his paper on, which was written on Jan 26th, 2019 or 2020, when the pandemic broke. And he actually calls it a white swan event because he says that in the network world like we live in today, it should have been easily contained. And it wasn't. But you have received the hard copy? Have you received the hard copy from school, from IIM? Or you booked it? Okay.
Yeah, I booked Black Swan, yes.
I thought they're now sending us these books. No, that's too much to expect from them. But having said that, it's a great book. So to cut a long story short, aviation progressed very quickly between these two wars and post World War II. And that's around the time when commercial aviation also started developing. Now, like any interaction between man and machine or person and machine, there are bound to be problems, right? Because very often it is the human error involved because he or she cannot understand how the machine works. And I'm going to talk about that in a bit with you about these accidents. So as a result, accidents began to occur. 1977, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Tenerife disaster. 2 747s, 538 people on board, crashed into each other on the ground. Forget about in the air, on the ground, killing all 538 people. That is famous, and maybe you can read about it if you're interested in accident investigations, which is available on Nat Geo, etc. In 1979, there was an Eastern Airlines crash. And I'm forgetting the word they used for it. I think it was it was called, it was Eastern Airlines 401, and it was nicknamed something later, but the crew got so absorbed with an indication on the aircraft cockpit, in the aircraft cockpit, on the landing gear position, which was a $5 switch. It was a $5 switch. They got so involved in trying to figure out whether the landing gear was down or not, that they went into some nearby terrain because they were so preoccupied with this problem, killing everybody, including themselves. And I think they called it the $5 switch problem. I mean, in the sense that something so insignificant could have cost, I think, 120 odd people died. It was then that NASA decided to conduct some workshops on what they called cockpit resource management at that time, which later on has been termed as crew resource management. I think the term cockpit resource management, or CRM, was, and Gaurav would be interested in this, was coined by a research psychologist called John Lauber. He's the one who coined the term first in 1979, and this is when they started with the concept of CRM. CRM was initially contained within the flight deck, and then later on, as we realized that it extended well beyond the flight deck, it got to be retermed as the crew resource management model. So what is CRM? It is described variously, but effectively as just the effective use of all available resources for flight crew personnel. And this, by the way, this extends to your organizations and your industries. In order to ensure a safe operation, safety is the big word in aviation. Reduce error, applies in any organization. Increase efficiency and avoid stress at the same time, right? You want to do your job happily, and the better you do your job in a happy way, the better you will get the job done. So this is what CRM actually means, and it involves a variety of skills that we pay attention to in the classroom, on the flight deck, in the aircraft, and in the organization, definitely in an airline organization. So some of the skills which we can discuss later, but the names actually tell you what the skills are: is situational awareness, communication skills, very important, teamwork, task allocation and delegation, decision making, and the following of standard operating procedures, very important, SOPs, which actually ensure that not only are the deadlines met, but they are met in a safe way. We use certain models on board the flight deck, and before we get into this, which I think Vaibhav is going to talk about, I want to just explain to you about, there are some great stories also. I could have told you about, instead of showing you these graphics, and one of the graphics actually, one of the stills had a great story. You saw people standing on the wing of an aeroplane, and that was Captain Sameer Bagai in the Hudson River, which I think everybody's heard of, right? There was a United Flight 232, which was a DC-10, McDonnell Douglas DC-10, 3-engine plane, old plane, which lost all its hydraulic lines. So interestingly, for techies, the plane which both Vaibhav and I fly today, the 787, most of the systems are electrical. They're based on batteries, right? And if you remember, a few years ago when it came in, there was a fire in the battery in Japan, and the 787 was grounded for a while, etc. But we do not rely so much on hydraulic lines like in the old days. All 3 hydraulic lines got ruptured in midair, resulting in the aircraft being, it's a 1 in a trillion chance. It's an impossibility to get out of. It cannot be flown. The aircraft cannot be flown without hydraulics. 3 men in the cockpit, and they had a 4th person to assist them, who was an instructor. They actually put the aircraft down on a nearby runway. I think Sioux City, that's where it was going. They put it down on the runway. 232 people on board, 112 died. They saved more than half the lives by effective maneuvering of the engines. This is where they thought out of the box, just like Sully did. So we're going to talk about out of the box thinking, which is important in organizations. Or I don't know, Vaibhav, if you've heard of the Gimli glider, which was an Air Canada flight 143.
I did,
yeah.
Yeah.
They were flying from Montreal to Edmonton. They lost both engines. They were a glider. A big plane doesn't glide so much. In fact, the saying is that a large wide body plane glides like a grand piano. In other words, it just drops, right? And they actually put it down on an abandoned racetrack. They put it down on an abandoned racetrack in Manitoba, in a little town called Gimli in Manitoba, and managed to save all lives. So there are some great stories of out-of-the-box thinking and how people have managed to do this. But I wanted Vaibhav to now introduce you to the Swiss cheese model, which applies in all industries. It talks about a break in the link, which can have a cascading effect. And then he's going to talk about something called FODEC, which is what we use as a tool to identify problems. It's like a SWOT analysis. So Vaibhav, we want to take this away?
Sure, Captain. Perfect. So you talk about the engine failure. Let me tell you, in my training days in Australia, I also had one engine fail. I was flying a 172. So it became a glider and I landed in one of the fields. So it was quite interesting. So, yeah, the investigation went on for quite some time, but it was an interesting experience, landing an airplane. I lost the engine and just landed down like a glider, like post landing in an airfield. So luckily Australia has vast airfields. I mean vast farmlands. So it was not that difficult to find a field.
Yeah, I'm sure it was difficult, but yeah,
it was okay. So I'll tell you what. How about Cap? I do the FODEC part, and I'll start with the FODEC part, and then you can continue with the Swiss cheese model.
Okay.
Right, so
just to introduce you basically to a Swiss cheese model, guys, is how a Swiss cheese has holes in it, right? That's what it was named. So a small event occurring in the entire chain. For example, if we were to just focus on aviation, a small mistake by a loader to load a bag, which has not been verified, can result in catastrophe down the line. And there's an example for it, a very sad example in Air India in 1985 when Kanishka was blown up, right? I don't want to get into the politics of why it was blown up, but the fact is that in 1985, a bag which was not identified by any passenger was loaded on board the plane because it did not, on board the 747, which was flying from London to Toronto, if I'm not mistaken, and it blew up just off the coast of Shannon because of terrorist activities. The bag was never. Today, remember how you have to? There was a stage where you have to identify your bags actually physically, and if you go to Srinagar, for example, even today they make you step down, they make you identify your bag, and that's when they load it on board. But anyway, it resulted in, and every catastrophe has resulted in a learning. Right, so this resulted in the baggage reconciliation system, which is pretty much foolproof. Just like Harshad Mehta resulted in SEBI norms becoming stronger and stronger and better, and today it's probably one of the most improved organizations in the country. So it is this break in the chain at a certain level, which can cause a cascading effect through the process and result in catastrophe. That's what he's going to talk about. That's what the Swiss cheese model is. And we are going to now, Vaibhav is going to discuss with you how we do a SWOT analysis when we have a problem on board. Take it away, it's all yours.
Right, thank you, Kev. So guys, has anybody thought out here that you're flying, okay, let's say, you're talking about engine failures. If the aircraft that you're flying in, one of the engines catches fire, what happens? How does the pilot deal with it? What all goes on in his mind? Has any of you thought about it, or anybody can give an insight? Okay, these are probably the things that would go on in his mind or something like that. Anybody want to chip in? No.
And depending on the aircraft, there would be multiple engines, I think.
Okay.
I think if you are considering all the engines are gone, I think they go into the glide mode. And if there's no chance of recovery, I think they drop down all the fuel. If they have to crash land, I think they let go of the fuel, everything in the air. And just in some.
Okay, no, we're going to talk about the model as to, we're not going to talk about the extreme scenario.
Yeah,
We don't want to lose all the engines.
So I would
so,
just like to add one thing. This is Jyoti Ranjan this side.
Let's say you've only lost one engine. Okay, guys, I'll just clarify. You've only lost one engine. And just to clarify, the aircraft is perfectly flyable on even one engine. Not perfectly flyable, but yeah, it can fly on one engine. So yeah, sorry, Jyoti, go ahead.
Yes, so I was thinking, means how the captains, they are, how proactive they are, because what I understand, if anything goes wrong while we are driving car or we are navigating ship, so that time we can manage. But in a plane which is 100 or 1,000 feet above the air, and at that time if anything goes wrong, then how they are managing, how quickly they are managing it actually. So I would like to hear more about all those things from your side, how you manage and rightly so what you have said, the catastrophe means what happens, and it has been reduced to such a very less percentage nowadays. So
Perfect. No, you're right. Absolutely, Jyoti. I completely agree with you. So we are working in a very three-dimensional, a very dynamic environment. You guys, this is the first time I heard of this word VUCA, and and when I researched it, and I could so much relate it to our industry, volatility. It's a very uncertain word. What do you think the aircraft generally? What speed does it cruise at in the air? Any idea?
Funnily, the
Anybody?
VUCA term was coined in 1989. Can you imagine?
I know it was that, and a lot of people don't know about it. I mean,
but Gaurav knows for sure, since it's his favorite word.
That's his favorite word. Yeah. No. It was a very good. That's a very good word that I take away from this course. So yeah, any idea what speed does an aircraft cruise at in during a normal cruise? What is the normal speed?
Around 500 miles an hour. Hi, this is about 750 to 850 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
Super. That's it. So about 600 to 800 kilometers an hour to about 1,000 kilometers an hour, depending on what the winds are at that moment. So now let's say we have an engine fire. Okay, one of the engine is on fire. Okay, what is our course of action? So we develop a model called a 4-deck. Of course, the first action is we're going to secure the engine. There are extinguishers within the engine. We do the drill. So there are two aspects to it. One is the technical, when then comes the non-technical. So first we take part of the technical skill, which is pretty much we got to extinguish the fire and we got to secure the engine, and so that there is no further on damage. So we take care of that. After that, we go for a model which is called 4-deck. It's FORDEC. So let's get into it one by one. What is F? So F stands for facts. What are the facts? What is the basic understanding of the problem? So, and we get the knowledge. So okay, what is the fact? We have an engine fire. All right. So is the fire extinguished? Is the fire not extinguished? But we managed to extinguish the fire. So we gather all the facts. And similarly, and I'm sure all of you can relate it to your own industries as well. So after you gather all the facts, then you decide, okay, we've had an engine fire. We managed to secure the engine. The fire's out. That's good. Now, what are the options you have? The option is now you would take various environmental factors into play. Do you want to continue to some other airport? Do you want to go back inland? Do you know how much fuel do you have? Then you take various accounts like the weather at various airports, the runway lengths. Then you take also think about the firefighting capabilities at that particular airport, because there are some airports which are bigger airports, which have a probably better firefighting category. But the smaller airports. Okay, so you would think about. Okay, so you would think about the company's interest. Does a company have a base there or not there? Would you want to fly probably an extra 15 minutes and go to a go to an airport where the company has a base where all the logistics and everything can be handled seamlessly? The engineering after you land, how much engineering. So all these are the facts that you take into consideration. Then you devise, you come up with options. The third part comes with the R. I think there is something, Shivam. Okay, anyway, so the third part is the R. R is called risks. So you analyze all the risks. So after you've got, you know what the facts are, you know what the options that you have, taking everything into consideration. Then you analyze the risks. Okay, these are the risks that I face at, with my particular or various options that I have now. So these are the risks. You analyze the risks. So after you've analyzed the risks, okay, then comes your D, which is your decision making. So now you have to make a very sound and a very well-informed decision based on all the facts that you have in the previous models that you've done. Then you make a decision. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. And that decision has to be conveyed to various authorities, and of course you're going to here you're going to work as a team. You're going to get the company to the picture. Of course, both the pilots or 3 pilots or 4 pilots, whatever they are, they're going to be taken into picture. The crew is going to be taken into consideration. The passengers are going to be taken into consideration. So you take a decision, and then E is execute. So the execution again part is very vital as well. So you have to execute it exactly in the right manner, the way you've planned it. And that is where your leadership role would come into play, because you start delegating tasks, right? So you execute that plan of action, whatever you want to do. And the last part is the clarification. So whatever you've done, whatever actions you've done, you always want to clarify that the plan is going as you want it to. There's been no deviation. So then there comes the clarify. So I just recap. FODEC, the facts. Okay, you have O is for options. Okay, R is all the risks being evaluated. Then is the decision part. Okay, where your leadership role comes into play as well. And then the execution. Okay, and lastly, and the most important as well, is the clarification that everything has been done. So this is what we develop a FODEC model. And like Captain said, the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, I think they are the most vital areas of that is what the most of the flying is based on these days. Like I was flying in Etihad, so we had people flying from different nationalities, different cultures. You would do long flights. It would be 18 crew members, and all 18 would be from different nationalities, different cultures, different backgrounds, different thought processes. How do you all bring them onto one page? So that is where we have SOPs coming in, which is a standard operating procedures, which I'm sure a lot of your organizations would use as well. So now it's basically standardization of a particular event. So SOPs are very important to this date. So I know what my area of responsibility is. I know, okay, this is my area of responsibility, so that there is no ambiguity, to resolve any ambiguity, the A in the VUCA. So to resolve any ambiguity, you have SOPs. I know somebody might ask me, there's a third part, another thing I'll just quickly hit on as well. How do I remember so many things? There are so many systems. If somebody's visited a cockpit, you will see probably there are numerous switches. There's probably 30, 40, 50 switches, and everybody gets into a awe that oh, how do the pilots remember all this? How are they used? So there's something that we have called a checklist, and the use of checklist. It's not, it's really humanly not possible for a human being to remember all the systems and remember every nitty-gritty things. Of course, there are a lot of things we do have to remember, which pertain to the immediate safety of the aircraft. But there are a lot of other things that we do by memory, but then we have a checklist. So that lays down all the procedures and verifies that everything has been done in order. And I had a cousin, she was studying medicine in Harvard Medical School. And, we were talking about these things when I was in the US with her. And I told her about the checklist model. And now even the medical practitioners, even the doctors, they've taken up this concept of getting a checklist. So now when you're going to an operation theater or, performing a surgery or something, now they have they have a checklist of their own, okay, to ensure that nothing is missed out, So these are the three key takeaways as of now. I mean, this is just, of course, come under one umbrella, which is, you could say, methodology and strategy. And so it's called FODEC, SOPs, and checklists. So these three are the key takeaways. I'll quickly show you a couple of slides. So honestly,
before you come to the slide, Vaibhav, since
right.
Americans love acronyms, and Americans love acronyms.
Yeah.
From KISS, which is keep it simple and stupid, to FODEC, to I'm going to give them one more, which actually you might find even more interesting in your industries, which is called DECIDE. I mean, in Air India and other companies, in Air India, we use FODEC, for example. Different models are used by different airlines. But there's a model called DECIDE, which I thought was quite interesting as well. Just decide. So the D stands for detecting the problem. E is to estimate what problems this can cause to your situation, right? C is to choose a course of action. I is to essentially identify a solution for this problem. D is to do the necessary actions to deal with this problem. And lastly, E is to evaluate your actions. You always need to evaluate the action you've put forward, right? And this applies in all industries. So this is a SWOT analysis of any situation across industries. It doesn't matter whether you're a techie, or a doctor, or a pilot, or, the other thing that we have been pushing forward a lot lately, I don't know if you guys have heard of something called evidence-based management. So for example, case studies will be evidence-based management, right? You have a case, this actually happened. For example, I recently started my Excel classes because I was struggling, right? So I decided to do some online Excel classes on the site because I found Qt. I couldn't figure out a histogram. I'm sorry. I could read it. I couldn't figure it out how to construct it. So I started taking Excel classes. And my Excel instructor told me about a problem in 2006. You know the collecting of data and then putting it on an Excel sheet? A mismatch just in that cost a company $6 billion. Right? I'm forgetting which company he mentioned, but it was a $6 billion mistake. So any mistake, you see the cascading effect, he just missed a few points of data, and then the decision they took based on that data resulted in a financial catastrophe for the company. So evidence-based management is the way we do case studies. We have something called evidence-based training being introduced in aviation. It's already there. Actually, Vaibhav has probably come across it in Etihad already. Indian companies are a little behind the curve as yet. But evidence-based training is simply based on all these accidents that you saw, we showed you in slides. You use that as case studies to introduce problems in a simulator session. All the training is done in simulator sessions, right? You cannot be doing it on actual planes with passengers because you cannot put anybody at risk. So all our training is confined, all our non-normal or abnormal training is confined to doing it, practicing it, and being checked out in the simulator, which is a large part of our profession. We are constantly going back into the simulator. We're constantly going back into the classroom to whether it is to refresh ourselves or to be checked out for something new, which is developing in the industry. Vaibhav, I think, spoke very nicely about the fact that, so there was a display of hard skills and soft skills. You had an engine on fire, you had depressurization, you had a problem with your landing gear, could be a million things. You first dealt with it with your hard skills, and then, yes, Gaurav, you're right. It is a simulator for us. It's a tough simulator, EPGP, but that's what he's written in the chat box. So, yeah, so it's exactly like that. An EPGP is a simulator for us. We are trying out. We are trying out, or being taught new skills over here to be able to use them in the real world later. Exactly, very great example. So, I wanted to talk a little bit before you show your thing about the stats about how CRM has helped reduce human error.
Sure.
Okay, firstly, guys, pilots do not like to admit it. And every time there's an accident, you will see Vaibhav's slide and it'll show you how much of it is human error. And a lot of it is human error. It's there. Pilots don't like to admit it. They take umbrage to the fact that if there's a statement which is passed after a crash, for example, I work with the DGCA now, and this present DG, who's my boss, had when the Calicut crash took place in Kozhikode a couple of years ago, his first statement, which was issued maybe a few hours later, was that the pilot was at fault. Most probably, it was a pilot error. Oh, you should have seen the kind of offense taken on WhatsApp groups, etc. But the fact is, yes, the accident had not been investigated as yet, but on the face of it, you could predict that it was probably human error, right? So this model of CRM and FODEC, etc., has helped us, and evidence-based training has helped us reduce this human error to a large extent, or helped to reduce it. Because remember, this is not 1979, 1965. The volume of flights is much more today. So with that volume, the percentage, if I tell you, oh, it was only 0.01, the fact is 0.01% probably means 5 crashes. And 5 crashes are a big number, right? Idea is to reduce it to 0 if we can. So the hard skills, soft skills are very important, but I'm going to talk about, and this I think would be an interesting OB. I'm going to talk a little bit about OB here and a little bit about managerial communications by giving you examples. There are 5 hazardous attitudes which have been identified by the CRM model. 5 hazardous attitudes of the leader. Now we are just going to talk about the captain. The captain is the leader of that group, right? So whether you are a project manager, you're a team leader, you're the CEO, you're finally a leader of that group, right? So self-awareness, which is important, should help you identify if you have any of these hazardous attitudes which have been identified in terms of CRM studies. So for one of the attitudes is the macho attitude. I can do anything, right? You can't. You have a team to help you. You're not supposed to do anything. In our industry, there's safety involved, there are passenger lives involved. Forget everything else. There is your own life involved, more importantly. Don't you think about your own life, right? Then there is impulsivity, being impulsive about decisions. That's why these models of decision making came about, by the way, because they identified these models. Then there is resignation. I can't do anything. That doesn't work. That doesn't work when you have 250 people sitting behind you who have put their lives in your hand. You can't just say, I can't do anything. There has to be a way out. You need to search for a way out, look for a way out. There is invulnerability. Nothing can happen to me. There's no such thing. It's been proved time and time again that however good you are, you can have a bad day and make us error in your decisions, whether it's in any industry, and it will cause financial loss, and all the way from financial loss to the loss of lives, right? And last but not the least is anti-authority. So we all like to be slightly anti-establishment, right? It doesn't work on a flight deck. So here comes the other problem that was noticed about South Asian cultures. Very hierarchical, at least on the flight deck and in the organizations. And I come from a public sector company. I think we have had Nisha talk about it. We have had Richa talk about it. I know for the fact that these two are from similar backgrounds as I am. And the fact is that in public sector companies, there's very little positive strokes, guys. I think I remember Richa mentioning in one of our classes that you will never be appreciated for the work that you do. There is very little meritocracy. It's all seniority based. It's all hierarchy based. Simple. One person, your course mate, you join together, 20 years later, he's become senior to you by one position. He expects to be called sir. It's ridiculous, actually. So that comes to the whole point about sir. This is where the Western culture actually scores over us. Because I often tell, and I've told all of you as well, I'm your classmate for Pete's sake. Calling me sir just reminds me of my age. Which is, it's not necessary, right? Because you can call me John, Sameer, Vaibhav, whatever you still, or you can call me sir, you still need to get the job done, boss. It doesn't matter. So we try to bring in our whole family structure, which is hierarchical. Our families are also hierarchical. There's a patriarch or the matriarch, etc. It doesn't need to be done that way. You can have a very flat gradient and you still have to get the job done. And there is a leader to your team. Somewhere, whether you like it or not, the leader is going to stick his or her neck out, right? A decision is taken by the team. It goes wrong. It's the leader who's going to lose his neck first, his or her neck, right? So with that position comes great responsibility. And similarly, that responsibility should make the person feel more humble. So we have a thing in aviation that when you put on the 4th stripe as a captain, the first officer wears 3 stripes. When you get promoted to a captain, you become a 4-striper. Those stripes, extra stripes, are supposed to make your shoulders droop with humility. They are not supposed to make you say, okay, I have a 56-inch and etc., etc., right? You are not supposed to, you're supposed to actually droop down with humility because you have been placed in a greatly responsible position of people's lives. When they come on board, any of you travel, you expect that the job will be done, it will be done well, you will reach point B from point A safely, right? So these are the attitudes that they have tried to reduce with the help of this kind of decision-making model, with trying to flatten the gradients. For example, I actually wanted Vaibhav to run the 4-deck model today because on the flight deck, we try and listen, the gradients even today, I have noticed as a trainer, can be very, very high, very, very high gradients, where the captain is not even ready to listen to the first officer who's a qualified, intelligent person who's able to give you certain inputs you will not be able to see because you're too close to the picture. You need to step back. I think, Vaibhav, we were discussing the other day that we are no more called pilots, we are called cockpit managers because the amount of automation is so high, right, that we are supposed to manage the flight rather than fly it. So, yes, with great power comes great responsibility. I've seen all Spider-Man films, Amit. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. So we make the first officer run the 4-deck because you know what? While I'm weighed down with the responsibility and my mind is clouded as a captain at that moment, there is something called the startle factor, which if you all saw the movie Sully, he talks about the startle factor. It's all very easy to say, I've lost one engine, but I have another engine, I'll manage. Man, at that moment, you feel moments of stark terror because this is not the normal, right? This is the non-normal. And you feel moments of stark terror at that time because you're just human. And then your training takes over. So we actually make the first officer run the 4-deck because he or she will probably come up with things which I haven't thought about. And then I take a considered decision. That's why I told you right in the beginning, it's effective use of all resources. So whether it's the air traffic control, it's the cabin crew, it's someone traveling passenger, a passenger, one of my pilots traveling passenger, I will take the view of everybody before I come to a decision. Right in the beginning, yes, the problem is we are traveling at 8 miles a minute when we have to do this. It's 8 miles a minute. So the decision process has to be quick. And you may make a mistake in executing it. And if you do, you have that C to recheck and reevaluate your position, right? Why don't you... So these are all points which are in any leadership position, in any organization, in any industry. And I think if we were to inculcate these in ourselves, we would be better leaders. You need to be flexible, you need to be open-minded, and you need to feel the responsibility. I don't know, Nisha may agree with me that you don't get to do a lot of this. I'm doing it because it's core to my profession. But in public sector companies, unfortunately, none of these things are really looked at. It's very hierarchical, it's very time-based, and you become a leader whether you're fit or not. So, however, why don't you show them the slide that you wanted to about how CRM has actually brought down the level of accidents?
Yeah, sure. Let's start with the slides and we'll get talking a bit. One sec.
After this, we'll give you our 5 key takeaways, and we can then, if you want to ask any questions, otherwise we can just move towards closing it because I think it's almost 8 o'clock.
Yeah. So we're going to, can you guys see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a very basic slide that we're talking about. So like Cap said, you know, CRM has how it has reduced the number of accidents over the, over all these years. So when we showed you the video, you know, we started showing you the video, you know, our human brain has a natural tendency to connect with an adversity, you know. So of course you saw the video with all the accidents and with, you know, all the, you know, the aircrafts coming down or whatever. So I know you guys would, that's the picture that is portrayed in front of everybody in terms of aviation. You know, it's a very sensitive field. So even a small accident, you know, just highlights the safety of aviation. So this is just a very basic slide just to show you guys. I don't think it's very clear. I don't think you really to read it that much, but I've got this from the Airbus website. So from 1960, there were almost 10 fatal accidents per million flights. Okay. And over the years, it is reduced down. In about 2000, it was about 1.6, 1.7 accidents per million flights. And now with the introduction of CRM, with the introduction of, with the advancement of the technology that we have, it just come down to 0.17, just 0.1 accident per million flight. But still, having said that, that our aim should be to reduce it down to absolute zero or absolute minimal. Like even 5 crashes or 10 crashes is a lot of crashes, you know, with the kind of technology and with the kind of the training that we have in today's dates. So yes, again, as I said, accidents per million departures, you know, in 2008, it was about 4.5, let's say, accidents per million departures. Now it's just 0.46. And like Captain Sameer rightly put, pilots don't like to admit it, but unfortunately, 49% of the accidents happen due to pilot error. It is very sad, but this is where the whole concept of the CRM comes in. And I'm sure, guys, when you go back, please do a bit of reading about the whole CRM thing. It's a wonderful, wonderful topic that you can inculcate in your own organizations, and you learn a lot about it. So now it talks about the safety. As I said, only 1 in about 20 million, you know, you have the chance in being killed or being met with an accident, which is super, super low, as opposed to road accidents, which I just don't need to give you guys figures is because it's widely available. They're almost like what, 20 deaths per 100,000 people, you know, all over the world, and it's stayed consistent. And there are almost there's almost an accident death happening every 4 minutes, which is very sad. So having said that, I think the flying record, the safety record of airlines have gotten a lot better. So that's one of the fun fact. That's one of the female captains, very senior captain, Captain Sameer's airline, and a good friend of him. So as I told you guys,
he just added that one, by the way. But
yeah. Did you tell her that we've added a picture?
I will.
Okay, so India, I mean, for our ladies here, we have the highest number of female pilots in terms of percentage all over the world. It's almost 12.5%, and it is growing by number every day, you know, followed by countries like Ireland, South Africa, Australia, United States is way down the list. So yeah, that's something we should be really, really proud of, And that's what I was talking to Captain Sameer as well. We'll probably get after a few months or something, we can get a very experienced, a female pilot to come and talk to us, address us. So it'll be very enlightening. So just another few key takeaways. Yeah, as he said, another couple of key takeaways that we can give you is he was talking about the self-awareness. As a yoga instructor, I'll just tell you one very, very small thing. First of all, guys, yoga was never meant to be a physical workout. It's one of the oldest traditions we have. And, I'm sure guys who are doing yoga here, it was never a physical workout. Yoga, it comes from two words, yuj and yujit. It is basically the confluence of your mind and your body. I'm not going to extend it, not going to get into technical details, but just for a small key takeaway, whoever is doing yoga, whenever you're doing any poses, watch your breath. Watch your breath. You have to synchronize it with your breath. And why I'm telling you that, and whatever you do, and why I'm telling you this is creation of self-awareness, so that's how you generate a self-awareness in you. And this is very, very important to deal in this VUCA world, that we're coming in. It's a very complex and uncertain world. So as long as you're aware of your surroundings, of your environment, you're aware of yourself, it is extremely important. And yoga is a phenomenal workout. Okay, it will not give you those biceps or the six-pack abs or whatever people want it, it will not give you that, but it will give you something much, much bigger than that. That's where you will see all our yogis, like BK Iyengar, Pratyap Joyce, and a lot of yogis. They're not those Arnold Schwarzenegger body types, but mentally they are just above everybody else. They're above everybody else. So it's very important, guys, to do practice yoga. Do practice it not with the intent of having of course that that will come automatically. You will get a good physical workout and everything, but then you're mentally you become very strong, and this really helps us, especially in our flying. I'll give you a very small example. I don't think we're running out of time, but just a very small example I'll give you. When we're coming into landing, and especially there are fog seasons, and next time you're flying in fog, I'm sure you'll appreciate the pilots a lot more. What is the approximate approach speed that we come into land at? Any guesses? You said, okay, we are cruising at about 600, 700 kilometers an hour. What is the speed when we are coming into land?
200, I guess.
Sorry?
It's 200, I guess.
Okay, you can go higher.
330 to 350.
Okay, no, that's a little higher. So anyways, you guys are perfectly around there. So it's about, let's say, 250 to about 270 kilometers an hour. Imagine you're flying, there is dense fog, you cannot see anything, and you're coming in for the approach. You have to do a precision landing, and you have to be so mentally aware of all the surrounding and the situation. You're coming, when you're driving your car, when there's dense fog, you can barely drive at 30 kilometers an hour, 20 kilometers or 40 kilometers, at the max 50 kilometers an hour, and you've got to be really, stressed. It's a very high stress environment. Similarly, when we are conducting an approach in low visibility conditions, the stress levels are very high. How do you manage that stress? And this, okay, I'm not going to go much into details, but then again, you have to be, it's just situationally aware. That's very important, just being aware of your surroundings, being aware of yourself, and being ahead of the time, being ahead of the game. You've got to be on the ball. You cannot, like as pilots, we cannot afford lag behind an aircraft. We've got to be ahead of the aircraft. We have to anticipate, okay, what is coming next, and prepared for any eventuality. Okay, there is a uncertainty in the VUCA. So we got to be prepared for any uncertainty. And so for that, we got to have a very, very stable mind. So, and there are, of course, there are many key takeaways, and we can go on for another hour. Captain Sameer would agree to that. We can go on for another hour. We can talk about communication skills. We can talk about time management skills. Both of us fly 13 hours, 14, 15 hours of flights, and he can talk about, how we manage the fatigue. Imagine landing an aircraft after being in that tube for 15 hours, in a pressurized tube for 15 hours. So it's not an easy task, but then again, how do you manage that fatigue and that stress? So we can have a chat about that again, in another session. So yeah, about resilience, again, this is what we were talking about the other day. So that's another thing that we can talk about. Resilience is a very thing. As a mountaineer, when I go up 10, 15, 20,000 feet, the oxygen levels are probably, they're less than half of what they are at on the ground, what they're in Delhi. When I go up 20,000 feet, the oxygen levels are half. It's extreme cold conditions, it's absolute adverse conditions. How do you deal with that? That is where your willpower comes into play, your resilience, your nature comes into play, so yeah. And Captain Sameer can draw a parallel to that.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to I wanted to talk a little bit about my. I think they would also identify a lot with my position as a manager in the company, but I think I'll leave that for another time because we've already run out of time. Because I learned some very interesting and a couple of severe lessons while heading a couple of departments in the airline as a executive. But having said that, yes, about 4 years ago, I did the Everest Base Camp with my younger son, who was 13 then, 13 and a half. I was 47. And I got to tell you that I did it mind over matter, because I was not going to take some 13 and a half-year-old kid laughing at me. Right? So, and he was initially. And having said that, 8 or 9 days later, when we strode into the base camp, we walked in side by side. Well, one is because my body finally got conditioned to it, but most importantly, a lot of it was just mind over matter, and also a slightly competitive spirit, which is why I'm a little upset about my OB marks. But so anyway, some key takeaways, guys. First of all, ladies, 12,000 or 17,700 odd registered pilots in the country. Almost 2,800 are women. It's a fantastic percentage going by world standards in what is notoriously has been a boys' club. It's no more a boys' club, and it hasn't been for a while. Personally, I'm gender neutral on the flight deck, especially when I'm training people. I do not like to look at their gender because the job has to get done. But I will tell you that when I do look at their gender, women are far more meticulous. I'm sorry, Vaibhav, they just are. And at their job, they do it often better than the guys. But yes, we will get you a woman pilot. One point, I remember Arun, the other Arun, on our WhatsApp group talking about diversity and why aren't we counting the number of men and women. For any gender neutral person, it's fine, right? I'm just saying that, look, I consider Nisha and Lakshmi and Arun and Gaurav all the same. As far as I'm concerned, they all need to do their job, and they do their job well. How does it matter what gender they are? But you know what? It's easily said because I'm a man. I've not been through the trials and tribulations that a woman has. Just like I can turn around living in a city, having seen the world many times over, I don't believe in caste. I may not believe in caste because I sit in a metropolis here, but the point is that what people go through in villages, because of the caste system, it's not easy. So it's very flippant of me to say, I don't believe in this, I'm a modern person, I don't believe in that. So women have been through great trials and tribulations to get where they are and faced a lot of rubbish along the way. And I will get a couple of people to talk to you about their journeys because it's not been easy for them. But it's getting much easier, and it is just a pleasure to see so many women in the aviation industry, in the cockpit, aviation industry chodo, in the cockpit, which was a very boys' club. And even today, the sad part is that as women rise in aviation, and I have had many women bosses, by the way, on the management side, wonderful people to work with. There'll be, for one person to praise them, there'll be 100 people to talk all kinds of nonsense about them, right? I think you'll know that. So but take heart, it's really changed dramatically over the last few years. So key takeaways. Vaibhav mentioned checklists, SOPs, time management, work to deadlines. As a leader, we discussed the other day about norms being established. The SOPs normally establish the norms, but if the norms are not established, then as a leader, you're supposed to establish the norms and spell it out to your team what's acceptable and what's not. By all means, take consensus. But as a leader, you really have to spell out. And you cannot make all the people happy all the time. That's just not possible. It's not possible. It's not going to happen. So for the greater good, always. Look at the bigger picture. Don't let your biases come into play. I don't like so-and-so in my team. I don't like the way he dresses. I don't like the way she talks. That's not the point here. You're here to do a job. If the person is able to deliver a certain task, look at the bigger picture, take a step back. Sully did that, right? He looked at the bigger picture in 30 seconds. And if you remember the movie, he actually broke the SOP to do some out-of-the-box thinking. And he put the plane down, which should have, ideally, everybody should have died. Not a single person died. Hell, the plane floated on the water. As he said, I didn't land in the river, I landed on the river, right? So you have to look at the bigger picture always where your teams are concerned. Technology, I think half of you are techies, so I don't have to tell you that you have to embrace technology, stay ahead of the curve. It's evolving so fast that you have no choice but to stay with it or be left behind. And that is why I decided to do Excel. You know, along with RKK's assignments and this, I said, I am going to devote some time and do this because I'm finding myself disabled, you know, it's a disabler. So you need to stay ahead of the curve. Take a chance. The men and women, very brave men and women of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo projects put a man on the moon, boss. They did it with less technology than is in your phone today. And they did it because they took a calculated risk. Lives were involved, so they took a calculated risk. They did intense planning. The math and the physics was worked down to a T. Of course, anything could go wrong. And many times it did go wrong in their journey to that first step on the moon. But the fact is that the better you plan, the more you calculate the risk you're taking and have a plan B and a plan C and a plan Z, you will be able to go ahead with your plan A. If it doesn't work, side shift. If it doesn't work, side shift. You have to be able to evolve. In terms of leadership styles, and that's my last thing, self-awareness, very important. While you're a leader, yes, you want personal development, but you also need to develop your team. You need to look out for your team, right? If you can help in their development as well as you go forward, it's just a better leadership style. Encourage innovation in your team. Prime example, Elon Musk. He's taking space exploration to another level because he's ready to actually innovate and innovate all the time. In terms of a couple of things, you need to be ethical as you can, and empathic. I think our professor Anupam Das keeps talking about empathy, and cross-culture communication is very important, boss. You're all working with companies where you are dealing with different cultures. We do it in the cockpit. Communication is key. If you get a chance, read the communication chapter in Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell, and you will realize how key the communication is. An interesting factor, Gaurav, you might be interested in this. There was a Pakistani airline, a low cost, I think JetBlue or Jetstar or something, which had a crash.
Yeah, JetBlue.
JetBlue, okay.
Yeah.
It had a crash on its inaugural flight, boss, with loss of life. And interestingly, if you listen to the CVR, the cockpit voice recorder, the language spoken normally on the flight deck is English. Under stress and under high stress, because the captain had no idea what was going on, and they went into terrain near Islamabad, if I'm not mistaken, he actually lapsed into his local lingo, what he was comfortable with. So you can hear them speaking Urdu. He's speaking English, and as the stress is increasing, stress levels are increasing, he's lapsed into Hindi or Urdu or whatever you want to call it, right? It happens. It's an interesting regression, yes, as you mentioned over there. So EPGP is our simulator, and I was told I have to tell you what E stands for to me, and then Vaibhav is going to tell you what E stands for him. Remember, he's a yogi. But I actually expanded it a little because I wanted to talk about each of the initials or alphabets. So E definitely has been the energy of this program and the energy of the people I have met in this program. G is, P. The P portion is the perseverance that we are all trying to show, and the perseverance that you require to complete this 2 years. I'm sure many times on a Saturday morning, you're woken up saying, I really don't want to do this. I don't feel like doing this, right? So there's a very famous saying, which is a part of being adult is muttering under your breath, screw it, or screw this shit and do it anyway, right? As an adult, you're not allowed to give up. You have to carry on. G, it's a very goal-driven program, as I think Mr. Kakani has proved to us. It's very, very goal-driven. So there is no difference between this and the full-time program. And P, I was going to talk about passion, but I actually want to talk about the fact that the passion I've seen is in my peer group. So all the people I see right now, I can see Arun, I can see Nisha, I can't see Sainatha and Shashank, but I know they're there. I can see Lakshmi, I can see Gaurav, and there's Jyoti, and there is Udit, and there's Amit, and there's Atul, and there's everybody, right? I mean, everybody, my QT group, my OB group, everybody showed so much. My managerial Shivangi, I mean, I can name all of you, 137 of you, or 136, but everybody shows great passion for, as a peer group. I have learned a lot in the last 2 months. And more importantly, I've enjoyed myself. I've enjoyed myself interacting. I'm interacting with people from different professions, different age groups, and I'm only learning. I'm only learning. So thank you for that, everybody. Thank you.
We also have members from the other groups, other sections also. So I'd like to welcome all the
all
participants from the other
people.
sections also. I just wanted to, give them a warm welcome to, participate in this session. And just wanted to chip it in to tell you this.
Perfect. So that is what we had to say. I think you can give your E if you want to.
You know what, I get asked these questions a lot of times. Every time, I'm sure you do as well. You're like, why are you even doing this program? How does it relate to your job? I mean, you gotta, you're earning okay, financially you're okay. It does not, MBA is completely different to flying. What do you want to? I was like, see, it's just not about learning something which would only pertain to your field. Yes, you learn, you grow from there. But there are so many other traits that I have learned being a part of this group. I think I've learned more in the last 2 years than probably I've learned in the last
2 months. In the last 2 months, yes.
Last 2 months. I've learned so much. Like Captain Sameer rightly said, it's such a passionate group. It's such a passionate group. When you really want to do something, you want to excel in something. There's nothing stopping you, and all this initiative taken by Gaurav and team, Gaurav, Jyoti, and all this entire team, Amit, giving this program a whole new dimension is just fabulous. And they just don't step back. They might not get enough responses from other people, but they will not step back. So this is something you've learned so much from this group. E, like Cap said, for me, E, I would take it as, yes, I'm a yogi as well, so I would call it ekagrata is what I would take it as, Professor Dipashish Chatterjee, he also mentioned this word. So that is one key takeaway of this. You will see a good mind, you will need a focused mind to do this entire course. And honestly, I didn't think it is, I always thought, oh, MBA, how difficult can it be? It'll be, just everybody does MBA, You can
that we all thought, I'm sure.
Everybody thought,
thought the same
like
thing.
every second guy is doing MBA, how difficult can it be? And now 2 months, I'm actually really appreciating the entire course and every penny that I've put into this course, and every time, every minute of my time that I give it to it. And I think I've just grown as a person a lot more.
Yeah, so, it's been wonderful, guys. The journey with you people, and I extend this to the other sections as well as we get to know them, has been just wonderful. Sure, it's been hard, but I have met so many wonderful people, all of you. So do not, so keep an open mind. You can tweak your personalities, but everybody has interacted with your personalities. Take it from a 51-year-old guy, your personalities are just great. Whether it's Arun, whether
There's a
it's
question
Gaurav,
from
whether-
Shivangi, sir. There's a question from Shivangi that what else you could have guys done, or what motivated you to come into flying?
So are you, Shivangi, if you're asking me, I'm a highly competitive,
No, I'm asking both. Like, I'm very interested to know what was the mere motivation, right? I know I've heard a lot of people say
to
that
be a
I just
pilot or to do the MBA?
no, the flying, the flying part.
Yeah.
What was the mere motivation? You know, probably both of you all can answer. If just I'm very curious to know, you know, because for
Okay, so
example,
I came from a conservative time, right, where my father, who's been an Air Force and an airline pilot all his life, so I saw it in my house forever since I keep telling people that I haven't been in Air India for 30 years. I've been in Air India since I was 8 months old, when I saw Air India in its glory days. And I had much better times, by the way, going on holidays with my father than I was able to give my own children, right? But having said that, I came from a conservative mindset of parents. In 1988, there were only 2 jobs that a person who had some academic strength did. Only 2 jobs. You either became a doctor or an engineer. Period. And you did PCBM, all right? And I did PCBM, and I did pretty darn good back in the day to be able to get admission in both. But the bug of aviation had been with me because I'd seen it in my life, right? I'd seen it in my household all the time. So I disappointed my father greatly. He's not so disappointed anymore, but I promised myself that I will not be that parent. And I will let my children do whatever they feel like. And today, I made sure that my older boy is doing mathematics and my younger one is doing bio. So I've not strayed at all. I've remained as conservative as I was 35 years ago in terms of academics. But that is my reason. I saw it actually in my life. And I was...
okay, thank you. What about you?
Vaibhav will give you a
So,
better
yeah, so like you said, you know, you've done PCMP. So even I did the same, physics, chemistry, maths, biology, because I came from a family, you know, where there were a lot of doctors, and everybody was, you know, advised me to be a doctor. And I'm very honestly, my aim was to be an actor initially, because I did a lot of dramatics. I have come from Mr. Amitabh Bachchan school, so I studied in Sherwood. So yeah, so I always wanted to be an actor. I did a lot of dramatics there as well, and I was okay in studies, but I wasn't one of the most brilliant minds to, you know, to become a doctor. So how I became a pilot was, but of course my family was against, you know, going to acting. So so I gave my family 2 options: either I become an actor or I become a pilot. And why I become a pilot is because when I was 13 years old, I'd gone to the US, and you know, I was always intrigued to, you know, I was see what goes on inside a cockpit, you know. And when I stepped inside and I saw the cockpit, and I was like, wow, this is, can I sit here one day, you know? And, you know, I had a conversation with the pilots that had flown Air Canada at that time. So I had a very, very interesting conversation with the pilots. Of course, I was a kid, about 13, 14 years old. And since then, it was just there at the back of my mind, you know, how is, you know, I would want to be a pilot. And I am a very avid traveler. I've traveled across the globe quite a lot. You know, I've traveled to all the continents, including Antarctica. You know, so I'm a very avid traveler. And as a pilot, it's given me this opportunity to travel around the world, experience different cultures, and this is something, okay, that I don't have to, you know, keep studying. So my dad's a lawyer, so whenever I used to see all his, you know, shelf full of books, I just couldn't get into that. So pilot is something which was a lot more practical oriented. Yes, we study books and we do keep updating ourselves, but it's very practical oriented. It gave me an opportunity to travel, you know, give wings to my dreams. So yeah, that's the reason I became a pilot, honestly.
Thank you. Yeah, really interesting. Thank you.
Any questions, guys, which we'd like
Gaurav,
to pitch in?
before we end, I want to make one interesting point about gender on our group.
Right, sir.
And maybe you can give me the psychology of it in our next hostel session.
Right, sir.
Whenever I have asked the ladies in my group, whether it's a Shivangi or a Pragya who are in my MC group, or Shoiba and Pooja who are in my QT group, or Lakshmi over here, Nisha, that listen, boss, please don't call me sir and G. It irritates me. Just call me by my first name. They are very easy to take up that thing and call me Sameer the way it is. The men don't seem to be able to do it. So I actually want to know why, because it just works better. And
that is a discussion.
So maybe you can think about this and give us the twist to this later.
No doubt, sir, and we will brew about it. And the takeaways, which I will sum up on behalf of all the participants here, is that EPGP is a flight simulator, and we have learned, and now we are back into the simulator, learning with all the different and brilliant peers we have right now. And it was a great session learning from you too, particularly the 7 anti-leader traits which you showed, Vaibhav bhai, especially the resignation, what all of us face, and the 4DIC as an acronym. And Sameer sir, as you mentioned, that your ego has to be kept behind the behind that cockpit, so that even your life is at stake. Multiple men's life or women are life at the stake when you're driving. That even your first officer is given the the charge to start 4DIC. If I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong. You said no, the first officer is given the charge. So all of us, we can learn is about the flat hierarchy and the values which Indian aviation sector practices and inculcates among all of us. I will like to thank both of you for taking out time. I'll just request anyone who has any question to pitch in, as we have, speared.
I'm sorry, I've not been able to see the chats. Maybe
so you can see the chats. Any question, guys, before we wrap up?
Any questions? I think Gaurav, we can organize. We have such a vast experience in this group. We have people from the telecom industry, from the life sciences, from the government, from the public sector. I think giving it a good space, we can organize.
Right, I'll share a news with all of you. I'll share a news with all of you. Bijoy or Binoy has read that email which we sent to him, and he is empathetic to the cause. He said, yes, definitely what you guys are doing is right. And I'll talk to the chairman APGP. He has also read the email, but we did not get the bandwidth to reply back. But he recognized me immediately by my name. He showed, I recognize you you have sent an email. So he has said, you guys are moving on the right direction, and we will soon schedule a meeting between you and the APGP chairman. So that is one way forward that we have done. And it's only due to the intersection connectivity which we are also building. And there's a girl called Zai. She gave me that spirit. Gaurav, be the go-getter. Don't be that government servant who is into the bureaucratic process writing emails. She said, give a cold call, keep spamming, and they will have to reply. So this is the learning which I said, you rub off when you meet different people. And that is the whole concept of these master classes. Thank you, everyone. I know we will be getting late for the schedule of our Arun class.
Yes.
And our other assignments.
Yes.
So thank you, guys. Thank you.
And also, Gaurav, special thanks to all you guys who are organizing these. And I know Jyoti is taking a lot of time out from his regular
intense
work.
Efforts.
Intense efforts by him.
We have given one acronym to him: relentless leadership.
Relentless leadership is right. So I know Jyoti is here. Fantastic. I know Amit is our quiet leader, and I mean, just everybody has done a great job. It's just thank you.
It's a symphony, sir. It's an orchestra. It's a symphony which we have to orchestrate. Everybody has its role to play.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you.
Half an hour.
Thank you for your
we
time.
want full class. Proper.
Yes.
If I can add one
variables
thing,
and all.
If I can add one small thing, you should meet people from some other section as well. They are way more passionate than us, and we do have some core group, and we do have leaders in there, and they are very much passionately there. They are proactively, they are giving inputs. They are volunteering them on how they can take this initiative further. So kudos to all that we all worked hard and we have achieved some small success. And thank you, Sameer sir, for joining.
Yes, Sameer sir. But yes, Lakshmi, I know there was no point having this entire class on CRM and flattening of gradients. So
once I'll reach to your level, and once I will have someone will invite me, maybe from EPGP 22 batch, someone, then then I'll stop calling you.
You are
sir.
already the class representative, and you're doing all the work for us.
True, very true.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you,
I will
guys.
see
Thank
you in
you for
Hamza.
such a
Thank
wonderful
you,
session.
sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Very
everyone,
interesting.
guys. Once
Thank you
again,
so much.
hope you didn't waste
Oh, not at all. Thanks a lot.
hour and a half.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sameer.
Thank you,
Superb.
everybody. Thanks, Vaibhav. Thank you.
Good night.